I am Meagan Dion. I am the Public Art and Artist Program Specialist, and, and I work for the Nebraska Arts Council. And I want to welcome you to today's Funding Expo panel. The Nebraska Arts Council has brought together representatives from a host of organizations that provide grants for arts programming in communities. We will learn about funding opportunities available through the the National Endowment for the Arts, the Mid-America Arts Alliance, and the regional arts organizations. Nebraska's Department of Economic Development, Nebraska Tourism, and Humanities Nebraska. First, we'll hear about Mary Sellers. Mary manages the Challenge America grant program at the National Endowment for the Arts. Challenge America focuses on lowering the barrier to access arts from around the country. Our second presenter is Maya Herring. She joined the Design and Creative Placemaking Division of the National Endowment for the Arts in April 2022. In this role, she works with the Our Town program, Creative Placemaking Technical Assistance, and with the Mayor's Institute on City Design. Our friend Margaret Keogh serves as the Director of Advocacy for Mid-America Arts Alliance, the regional arts organization serving the arts and artists in Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas, and beyond. Through her work, she seeks to connect community leaders with the transformative power of the arts. Keogh joined M-AAA in 2014 as the Director of Marketing and Communications. Jenny Mason has been in her current role as Director of Disaster Recovery at the Nebraska Department of Economic Development since 2020. Prior to that, she served in a handful of roles at the agency since 2013, working with the state tax incentives and grant administration for state-assisted placemaking initiatives and capacity building, as well as planning downtown revitalization and other community betterment initiatives funded through the CDBG. And last but not least, Katie Bradshaw. Katie Bradshaw is the Humanities Nebraska's Grants Management and Outreach Specialist. She previously worked with the West Nebraska Arts Council and Midwest Theater in Scottsbluff. So, with all that said, we're ready to go with our presentations. And we will start with our friends from the National Endowment for the Arts, Mary Sellers.
Well, I'm so happy to be here today. Welcome, everyone. As intro said, I'm Mary Sellers. I am a middle-aged woman with dark hair and a colored checkered shirt, and I am joined with my colleague, Maya Herring, today. We are so glad you could join us, and thank you to the Nebraska Arts Council for putting this together. It's great to get so many funders and resources together in one room. So today we're going to be sharing some information about our three main grant programs with you. And we also hope to sort of demystify a little bit about the NEA and encourage you to share the information about available grants from the NEA. So some of you may be familiar with this. Next slide. Some of you may be familiar with us, but the NEA is an independent federal agency. And through our programs, we award thousands of grants for organizations and institutions across the nation. And each year, those are to strengthen the nation's arts and cultural ecosystem so that together we can help everyone live more artful lives. We're committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and fostering mutual respect for the diverse beliefs and values of all individuals and groups. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to focus on our three main funding opportunities. The first, the Challenge America program, which I help manage, the Grants for Arts Projects program, known as GAP, and the Our Town program, which Maya is going to focus on. So each year, we fund many projects through these grant programs by supporting arts organizations, local arts agencies, art service organizations, local education agencies or school districts, and other organizations that can help advance the NEA's goals. So we're going to go over the basics of these programs, but all of the full information is available on our website, which is arts.gov. That's arts.gov. Next slide. So applications are open to both new and returning applicants. So in order to be eligible to apply to any of the three programs, an organization must be based in the U.S. They also must be they must be based in the U.S. A unit of state or local government, or a federally recognized tribe or tribal community. Organizations must have completed 3 years of arts programming history prior to the application deadline. The organization does not have to be a 501c3 for all 3 of those years, but it does need to have 501c3 status at the time of application. And then these grant programs do not accept applications from individuals, fiscal sponsors, or applications from commercial or for-profit enterprises. Next slide. There are restrictions on what we're able to fund. So some examples of the activities or costs we do not fund are general operating or seasonal support projects. It should be for a specific set of activities, individual pre-K through 12 school projects, the creation of new organizations, subgranting or regranting, with the exception of eligible local arts agencies and GAP, facility construction, purchase, renovation, and social activities such as receptions, parties, galas, community dinners, picnics, and potlucks. So this is only a list of what we do not fund. A full list can be found in our guidelines at the unallowable activities and cost link. So now that we've reviewed who might be eligible, we'll do a little bit deeper dive into each of the specific programs, because that's sort of across the board, some general information. Next slide. So Challenge America, which is the program I work on, is a multidisciplinary arts grant program, meaning you can be doing arts projects in one or more of our designated 15 artistic disciplines. All of the grants are $10,000 all or nothing grants with abbreviated application. We have robust technical assistance, and we have one deadline, which this year it's coming up in April 25th, 2024. Next slide. The focus of this program is really all about reaching underserved groups and communities. So if the applicant is not doing that intentional work, then they may want to look at the Grants for Arts Projects grant program instead of Challenge America. So what do we mean by underserved? So we have a very specific definition that is designated and defined by our legislation and agency policy. And it refers to those whose opportunities to experience the arts are limited relative to geography, ethnicity, economics, or disability. And in the application itself, you are asked to select what characteristic is applicable to your organization, and you are asked to provide details about your intended audience in the application. So the Challenge America program can be a good fit for small organizations. We don't have a strict definition of what is considered small because we're a national funder, that really varies depending on the different artistic disciplines and the location. So a theater company in New York City may be considered small, sort of in their cohort, but in comparison to a film nonprofit in South Dakota, that it may be quite large. So we sort of let applicants sort of self-identify as small. So that could be a good, so we typically see that we're funding is small or mid-sized organizations in this program. And lastly, Challenge America can also be a good fit for those who have not received funding from the NEA before. So new grantees or new applicants. However, if you are simply new, but you're not reaching that underserved community or group intentionally through the project you're proposing, then again, Challenge America may not be the right fit for the organization. Next slide. Now onto our primary grant program, the Grants for Arts Projects, or the GAP program. For this program, you can request funding generally between $10,000 and $100,000. And you will choose one of the 15 artistic disciplines to submit your application to. So there are two deadlines. One just passed last week on February 15th, and the second is in July of this year. So although you missed the first one, you can apply to the second one, which is in July. Next slide. So applications are accepted under 15 different subcategories called disciplines. So each has their own set of guidelines, requirements, and staff. So each funding is project-based. So the applicant needs to select the program area that best suits the content of the project and not necessarily what your organization does on a day-to-day basis, so it can differ depending on what you're submitting a project for. And if you're ever unsure, because some of them overlap a little bit, you can certainly reach out to our staff and they can identify who might be the best person to chat with and any questions that you have about choosing which artistic discipline. Next slide. For both, and for all of our grant programs, Challenge America, Grants for Arts Projects, and Our Town, funding is project-based, as I mentioned. So meaning that your application should be for a specific set of activities, such as an exhibition, performing arts production, and not for your entire season of programming or general operating costs. So we accept a broad range of project activities, including for the creation and development of new works, public engagement with, and access to the arts, learning in the arts at all stages of life, and services to the field. We support a wide variety of project sizes, so from very small to very large. And projects can be existing programs for your organization that you already have sort of in your regular schedule, or it could be something that's a brand new activity for you. We support projects in communities of all sizes in 50 states and US jurisdictions, including projects that serve rural, suburban, and urban areas. Most of the time we see projects that are for 1 or 2 year project support. So that's something to consider, but it could be much shorter than that as well. Next slide. So an organization may apply once per calendar year to either GAP or Challenge America. So you can't apply to both within the same calendar year. The only exception to that rule is organizations submitting an application on behalf of an independent component, which is called an IC, which is federal language for a parent organization, but it has to be one that operates completely independent of their parent organization. So organizations may also submit applications to the Our Town program, which Maya is going to get into in just a minute, or our research grant categories, in addition to the Grants for Arts Projects or the Challenge America grant program. So in each case, you need to be sure that your application and grants don't overlap in terms of costs and activities if you want to apply to Challenge America and Our Town, for example. So in other words, you can't use more than one NEA grant to fund the same activities. So more information about eligibility for both Challenge America and Grants for Arts Projects, you can find this information under application limits on our website. And I think that sort of rounds it out for me. So I will hand it over to Maya to share a little bit more about the Our Town program.
Thanks, Mary. Hi, everyone. My name is Maya Herring. As Mary mentioned, I am a cisgender Caucasian female. I have short brown hair, and I'm the Our Town specialist with the NEA. So I work directly with the Our Town grantees, and just we'll share a little bit about how this program is similar to and also a bit different from some of our other programs. So some key, first I'll just start with Our Town is a NEA's creative placemaking program. We understand and recognize that community building, creative placemaking work has been happening in communities for a very long time. But in 2011, the NEA initiated this program as an arts and design fueled community stabilization and building type of initiative in response to the Great Recession of 2008. The program offers one-to-one matching grants from $25,000 to $150,000 for 1 to 2 year project terms. Since 2016, we've offered free opt-in technical assistance support for grantees and also for the larger creative placemaking and keeping and knowing field. Our town is an annual opportunity with deadlines in early August. And so now I'll get into some of the distinctions between our town and some of our other programs. Next slide, please. So our town requires a partnership between a local or between a 501c3 nonprofit and a local government or quasi-government or tribal governmental entity. And we also expect that arts or design expertise would be represented in that primary partnership. And so if neither the local government entity or the 501c3 nonprofit has the arts and design expertise, then a third partner is expected to, again, be part of that kind of leadership triad. And we ask that folks demonstrate those relationships through letters of support for the project. So our town projects are community driven, they are place specific, and they're rooted within the context of the community's unique identity. Projects must demonstrate a specific role for the arts, culture, or design, and really as strategies to strengthen that community through advancing local economic, physical, or social outcomes. Our town projects are as much kind of about the process of that community building as they are about any final piece of work or performance or public art, for example. So we talk about community outcomes and systems change as the North Star of our program. What we mean by that is the integration of arts, culture, and design into through cross-sectoral partnerships, leading to these economic, physical, and social changes. And really more plainly, that arts, culture bearers are sustained and engaged in the community and resourced over the long term. So our definition of kind of creative placemaking and community building is really intentionally broad and open. And because we believe that creative placemaking draws on all artistic disciplines and can be deployed as strategies, again, to address a wide range of community issues or challenges, from things like public health and safety, economic development, housing, etc. So it could be the establishment of new partnerships or cross-sectoral work, or it could be about changing policy in the community or innovative ways of training and building out an arts ecosystem. So in FY24, we indicated a particular interest to see projects where arts, culture, and design were at the intersection of health and wellness, transportation and infrastructure, and climate-related challenges within a community. So let's go to the next slide, please. Just want to talk a little bit about the body of work of this portfolio. So we have thus far had 13 rounds of grants. We've supported over 730 projects across the nation and her territories. The NEA has invested close to $53 million in these projects, and that is for a wide range of project types and variety of partner configurations, really in communities of all sizes. Next slide, please. So our town projects may include arts engagement, direct artist residencies, or opportunities for the public to, really get involved in like making art or an arts performance or something like that, or public art. We also support cultural planning and such as cultural district planning or asset mapping or public art planning, those kinds of activities. Design activities is something that we see a lot in this portfolio as well. And again, that can be about the design fees, that can be about public space design, it can be about the community engaged process in rethinking spaces and places. And we also support artists and creative industries. So think about leadership development or professional development for an artist's community and how that builds to the larger community support for the integration of arts and culture into community planning processes. So just a couple of really quick examples. So an Our Town project might focus on examining a complicated history of the community. And then proposed activities might include artists working with the community leaders to use arts-based activities to imagine new solutions to these issues, or intentional outreach efforts where local officials, healers, teachers, parents, elders, and cultural bearers are informing community stories and messages about place and home. Or community engaged redesign of a public space to support greater cross-cultural activities and engagement. Just one kind of example. Next slide, please. So with all of our programs, we ask our panelists, our citizen panelists, to review based on two categories: artistic excellence and artistic merit. And these are legislatively required, congressionally mandated review criteria. Now, each program can articulate beneath those larger categories some more specifics about what is a competitive proposal in that specific portfolio. But those are equally weighted categories that our review panelists will assess all applications against. Next slide, please. In thinking about applying to any of our programs, it's really a two-part process. So the first part is folks need to complete an application through grants.gov, which is totally separate entity. It's essentially what we call the standard form, or SF424. And it's a quick form with just basic contact information. Currently, you'll find the Challenge America April deadline and Grants for Arts Project July deadline are available, and you can access those through grants.gov. Once our town posts our guidelines, which is probably in May, and those will be posted at the NEA's website at arts.gov, then you'll see the link for the Our Town program as well. So then part two, once you've successfully completed part one through grants.gov, you'll be given access to the NEA's applicant portal, and that's where you really submit the meat of your specific project. And so each program has their own questions that you would need to respond to in a narrative, and then also your budget and work samples are, in the case of Our Town, letters of support would also need to be uploaded. Next slide, please. So just wanted to go over a few tips for y'all. So financial need is not part of the review criteria. So I know that can be the case for some other funders, but in this case, for the NEA panelists are instructed not to penalize organizations based on size or perceived need. However, it is your organization's ability to really carry out that project that is included in artistic merit as part of the criteria. So all applications, or really most applications we receive, have really great ideas, but it's also important to have a clearly outlined plan. So make sure you've identified the who, what, where, when, etc. of your project, so that panelists can really understand the scope of your planned activities. Applications are awarded on a competitive basis, so we do not have a set roster of organizations that are guaranteed funding each year. It's a fresh start. Panelists will not receive information about your previous applications or grants with the NEA as part of the review. So really explain, the work that you do, and so that they understand that. Please reach out to program staff prior to your application submission. While we cannot review a full draft, staff are able to and available to answer questions about what is competitive in the portfolio, that type of thing. They can recommend or talk through, some typical pitfalls or things like that they see in the set of proposals that come through each year. So make sure that you do, if you are planning on contacting staff, that you do that with plenty of time to be able to make any adjustments, and recognizing that certainly the closer we get to deadlines, the more overburdened staff become in those times. So keep that in mind. We also encourage you to be a panelist. It's a great way to learn about the process. It's a really interesting and fascinating process to see the work and see what other folks around the country are thinking about and what they're submitting. And so, you know, there's a link to sign up on our main grants page on our website. Or you can also recommend friends or colleagues who you think would be good panelists and encourage them to sign up there. And then we just say, you know, start early. Each application process can be very time consuming. And so just give yourself ample time to kind of complete each of those steps. And we anticipate that after registering, it takes approximately 26 hours to draft and submit your application. And that would be for primarily based on what we hear from those that have applied to GAP. Next slide, please. So this is just our website, and just want to highlight the grants section, and then each program has its own criteria and stuff underneath you can click on each program right there. Next slide, please. So once you navigate to each project, this is the Grants for Arts project site, but there's also frequently asked questions and also applicant resources that have information about additional resources that might be helpful to you as you craft your application. Next slide, please. So here's some contact information just generally for the Challenge America team, Grants for Arts project, and you can drill down to the specific contacts for each artistic discipline. And of course, if at any time you can reach out to our town as well at ot@arts.gov.
Thank you so much, Mary Sellers and Maya Herring. Both of those speakers joined us from the National Endowment for the Arts. So we're so happy that they could join us and share that great information. Now, thank you. And now we'll be excited to hear from Margaret Keogh from the Mid-America Arts Alliance.
We're going to talk about funding. And one note I should make about the funding is there's a lot I'm covering. I'm going to go quickly, so hold on tight. But just know you can find me, you can find our colleagues, and you can also go to our website, sign up for our email address as well, or our email blasts. Artist Inc. Some of you have participated in Artist Inc. in the past. We do, unlike the NEA, fund programs for individual artists and also grant dollars to individual artists. So we recognize you can't have the arts without artists, right? And so Artist Inc. and Artist Inc. Express, there's a few programs coming up mentioned on that slide. Artist Inc. Express, which is a condensed version where you learn ways to be better working artists, about unsexy things from paying your taxes to do you have a website, do you have an elevator speech, all of those things. And we are excited to say we are bringing our full cohort-based Artist Inc. Program back to Nebraska next year. Next slide. Interchange Artist Grants, we just announced this today that we are reopening our grants available to artists working towards social change in some way, shape, or form. So this is a really great program to, lift up the work within our region for some artists who are trying to affect change within their communities. And so we've really had some great programs or projects come out of this work. Applications actually open today, so you've got some time to work on those. Next slide. Also, talking about artists, but also really some organizations. I know we've got some folks who use our regional touring program grant dollars. These are dollars where we pay you to pay the artists that you're bringing into your community. These would not be Nebraska-based artists. These would be artists that are based in our region. So somebody in Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, or Texas, that you are wanting to come and perform in your community or work in your community. If they're on the state roster, just as Nebraska has a state roster of artists, we will cover their fees up to 50%, up to $5,000. And you can tap into those dollars up to 3 times a year. So those are dollars that are available until they kind of run out for a state. I will say Nebraska, keep asking for the dollars. Anything I talk about, please ask. It makes us really happy to get dollars into Nebraska, particularly locations outside of Lincoln and Omaha. Sorry, the folks in Lincoln and Omaha, but we want to get to Columbus. We want to get to Fremont. We want to get to Red Cloud. You know, we want it, Norfolk. I see you over there. We want to get these dollars out in our region. So you'll see some of our users there, Kearney. I know you use them as well. The next slide. Artistic innovation grants. Those grants are due at the end of this week. So if you haven't worked on yours, just know this comes up every year. Some of these grants, most of these grants are yearly cycles. And so know that if you've missed really getting your act together to get something done by Friday, you know, we'll be at it again. So these are grants of up to $15,000 to pay for a new work of art that can be replicated or toured in some way in our region, or have an impact. So I know Denise is down there. We funded a work of art that's now in the lobby of their theater in Kearney. Tumbleweed Symphony. But $15,000 went to pay for the artists to create that work of art. And so we're thrilled to help disperse those dollars as well. I will say, don't have a slide for one of our programs that's not really active at the moment, but we're working towards getting it active in the state of Nebraska. It's called Engage, and it is professional development, organizational development for small to mid-sized organizations. We know we have kind of a special spot in knowing the big guys, a lot of times, they've got a lot of staff. They've got people who know how to write those grants, right? But it's the small to mid-sized guys who really need to work on board governance, your bylaws, how to get into fundraising and grant writing. And that program goes over those things, and we kind of deep dive and hold hands with organizations to say, the best thing that's going to really work well in Nebraska or arts organizations in this community is to add a little muscle to what they're doing. So we're here to work with you. Next slide. All the U.S. regionals have national programs. So the U.S. is divided into 6 regional arts organizations, so we're kind of right there in the middle. And next slide, Sam. So we all have different programs of, you know, national impact. I will say the U.S. RAOs and U.S. regional arts organizations are now collaborating more. And so we just ran the grant cycle, but it should come back next year for Arts Here, which was to support organizations that are committed to equity within their programming and engagement in those audiences that are underserved. So, but they're real dollars. I mean, grants up to $130,000 going into a community to affect change. Next slide. Of course, you're in Mid-America Arts Alliance's region. And on all these slides, I have all their website addresses, so you can jot them down if you want, or get with me later. Creative Forces community engagement grants. We just ran the cycle for this year. We just had the deadline. But these are programs that are bringing arts programs to veteran populations, veteran-related populations that have been exposed to trauma. So we know the arts heal or make communities better. And so these are, you know, programs that work to, you know, get people back into civilian life, have a sense of well-being, increase their socialization. There's a lot of, you know, trauma out there with military populations, and so we're really excited that we are able to do this program nationally. I will say 2 organizations in Nebraska received this grant last year, Western Nebraska Arts Center in Scottsbluff, and Blixt, the theater company in Lincoln here. So they're working on things with military-related populations, which is great. Next slide. Several of you know us from our work through Exhibits USA. I think they're in Red Cloud. There is the 4th grade project that I believe is at the Opera House right now. But we send exhibitions to small and mid-sized organizations different venues, whether it's museums, university galleries, galleries within a theater, to communities all across the country. So it's a way for you to bring people together through works of art or different themes. It's also a way to, if you are a collecting institution, but maybe it's a way to kind of show off what you do have by bringing in a complimentary show, or just organizing exhibitions involves a lot of work. So this is maybe your downtime while you work on something else to fill your galleries. Next slide. So New England Foundation for the Arts, they serve, the arts groups in New England, but they also are the ones who run the National Dance Project. So if you are a dance company or work with a dance company, they are eligible to apply for those funds. They also run the National Theater Project, and those are also funds to create a new and U.S. touring of different theater projects, and those are grants of up to $130. Next slide. Mid-Atlantic, those are our colleagues kind of in the middle of the eastern seaboard. They have U.S. Artists International grants to support performances of U.S. individual artists and ensembles internationally. So they send people on the road. I know Bach aria soloists in Kansas City were sent to Korea to perform a few years ago. Making Movies, another band out of Kansas City, they were sent to Panama to perform at a festival. And so, what a great way not to just perform outside of the state, but get outside of the country as well. They also have the Performing Arts Global Exchange Program, where these are grants to support U.S. presenters for presentations of international artists. So they will tap a different country or a few countries each year. I think they're bringing in some Brazilian performers, and was another South American country they're bringing in the next year. These are artists that are ready to perform in Kearney or go to Red Cloud or go to Columbus. They'll help supply some funding to get them there. Next slide. South Arts, our colleagues in the South, they run the Jazz Road Tour programs. So these are for jazz musicians, particularly emerging in mid-career, to help you get out on the road. So they'll help, you can apply for up to $15,000 to help you develop a jazz tour to get out there. And the next deadline is March 1, but they have rolling deadlines with these programs. They even have residencies, up to $40,000 for a jazz musician to work on being a better jazz musician. How awesome is that? They also have a program which I will point out, which is called D-Plan Arts Ready. It is about preparedness. The pandemic hit, and so many of us were not ready to go. Or there are natural disasters that can hit. What are you going to do when the tornado hits your building? This program will help you maybe start thinking about what should we do? What can we do? Cyber attacks are another issue that come up. Or if you're an individual artist, did you have a fire at your studio? What can you do, or how can you think about things in advance? And then should disaster strike, what places are there to help you? And they've done a great job of pulling those resources together. Next slide. Arts Midwest. Arts Midwest, they have a lot of publications. I put on their Ideas Hub because they have a lot of articles and tools, for those in the arts and a lot of leaders in the arts. So, you don't have to think of all these ideas on your own. It's called benchmarking. Borrow somebody else's and make it your own. They also run 2 national programs, NEA Big Read, which would be really great for a community arts district to think about, or a cultural arts district. Bring a community together to read and discuss a book. Up to $20,000 going generally to a library, but they could do a cultural arts district, I would think. Now get into those guidelines and make sure I'm correct. They also run Shakespeare in American communities, supporting Shakespeare in schools and in the youth justice system. It's amazing. Shakespeare speaks to so many. Next slide. My colleagues in Western States Federation, Many people know them from their technology products that they produce, like Zapplication or Cafe, but they also are the leaders for our National Leaders of Color Fellowship, where we are pulling together, we're asking leaders or emerging leaders of color to apply to create a community and cohort, because so many organizations are looking to hire talented employees of color, and they feel they're not finding them, but this will help find them and help get them ready to do that. So we have, this program taps somebody from each of the 52 states and jurisdictions, and gets them ready to lead and take that next step. Next slide. That's it for me. I'm trying to move really quickly to stay on time. I feel like I threw out a lot of seeds and a lot of information, but please find me, or please go to our website. On one of the sheets that got passed out in this site, or here in the building we're in now, there's a QR code to join our email list. So just stay in touch. No, we're not far, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Margaret. It's great to hear all of that. And of course, always happy to share everything that M-AAA does. They're a great partner to have. So next, we will hear from Heather Hogue, the Grant Administrator and Deputy Director of Nebraska Tourism.
Okay, what I'm going to talk about today, I'm with the Nebraska Tourism Commission, and what our agency does, essentially we promote Nebraska as a tourism destination, and we're here to get travelers to come to the state, to move around the state, to spend their time and their money. So essentially today I'm going to talk to you just about a couple of our most popular programs. The Nebraska Passport Program is one of them. That is not a funding source program per se, but I felt I would be remiss if I didn't touch on it because it's such a popular program for different communities, private businesses, all kinds of things that we promote through that program. What that program is, and if you've ever seen the booklet, this was this past summer's booklet, and this was this past winter's. The Nebraska Passport Program has a large number of dedicated followers is how I would brand them. If anyone, has anyone in this room done the Passport Program? Yes, participated or been a destination on it. It's a very fun, popular program. It gets people out and about, even in the winter. The Passport Program is one of those things that people have, I think this is the 15th year coming up. And it's one of those dedicated, we've had people from day one that can't wait to hear all about our next stops. Well, the reason I want to mention it to you guys is because it's completely free to participate in. It doesn't cost your business one dime. There is an application process that's a nice, short, sweet little one page. But if you own a business or if you're a community that has some great businesses that you certainly want to be on that program, coming up will be the time to apply for it. In summer programs, we have 70 stops that are part of it. In the winter program, we have 20 different stops. And as part of one of the stops, we help promote you in-state and out-of-state with things like you might see us doing interviews on 1011 or KETV, or the Omaha World Herald does spreads to help promote those businesses. So I felt like I better bring it to your attention. If you haven't heard of it, you can read more about it at nebraskapassport.com. It's a really great program. You can find out how to apply, and you can read all about the other businesses that have taken part in it. Next up to talk about is our Tourism Marketing Grant Program. This one is our most popular funding assistance program. It's a state government funded program. And the goal of that program is to market to visitors in an effort to increase non-local visitors from outside of your community or outside of the state or outside of your region to get visitors to come see you and spend time. The funding is available for all kinds of different promotions that you might think of. There really isn't any kind of marketing or promotional activity that's not available to be funded. You might buy media advertising such as radio, television, Newspaper or magazine ads, those are kind of the customary old school marketing realms that are still used regularly. You might have a website that needs to be developed and promoted. If it's a new build of a website to help let visitors know about your facility or your community, or if it's a rebuild of an old website, that you can ask for funding for. You might need to pay a professional photographer to do some image photos or some videography of your destination so that you can help promote. You can ask for funding for that kind of thing, or to develop any of your advertising itself. If you wanted to pay a professional ad firm to pay for your development of your ads, that can be eligible as well. So your main question is, who's eligible to apply in the program? Any nonprofit and for-profit businesses are eligible. The only thing that is not eligible is state or federal government agencies. You do have to have a federal ID number. That is one of the prerequisites to apply for funding. But other than that, whether you're a local community, a chamber of commerce, maybe you're a foundation, or a business owner or a private attraction or an event, you can all apply. The grant program the funding is anywhere from just a few dollars up to $25,000 that you can request. And that can be for a number of different activities. There really isn't a limit of how many things you can ask to apply for. The match requirement on the program is 25%. And half of that can be in-kind or donated services. So for example, if you run an event, maybe it's an annual event and you have 50 volunteers that do a whole bunch of things for you, you could use their volunteer services as part of your match. So it's a really budget-friendly program. The goal is to make it for communities of all sizes, shapes, and budgets. And we always encourage regional partnerships or partnerships that might happen through a variety of communities or like-minded destinations. If you were looking to promote an area of art galleries for First Fridays or a Chick Weekend to come to your creative development area, any of that is eligible. So at this point, we don't know an exact date of when the applications will begin to come in, but the guidelines will be posted typically by middle of October. So start planning your projects and thinking about it right now. And you have until middle of October. The guidelines will open. The timeline to submit your application is typically till middle of December. And we will announce the awardees in February. So, and you can find all of the information. The current guidelines of our program is available on visitnebraska.com. And stop in and see me or give me a call if you have any questions. One thing probably that's best to touch on is what's not eligible in the Tourism Marketing Grant Program, because that's definitely one of the top 5 things I get asked about it. It is not a bricks and mortar grant program, so we can't build your destination, build buildings for you, develop signage, put signage on the highway for you. But we can help promote in just about any other way. So I hope that's helpful to you. I tried to keep it short and sweet. You have so much information flying your way. Thanks so much for coming today.
Thank you so much, Heather. It's great to hear about all of what tourism can do for creative districts. Next, we'll hear from Jenny Mason, who is the Director of Disaster Recovery Division of the Nebraska Department of Economic Development.
So CCCFF is a program that I took with me when the started. So it's a very near and dear to my heart. It's been around since 2004, but I am going to talk about 2 different programs. One is a state program, CCCFF, which is not fun to say all the names together. Civic Community Center Financing Fund, CCCFF, C3F2, whatever you want to call it. It is a placemaking program offered by the state of Nebraska. It's an excellent, it's my favorite. I think it's probably the best state program that the state offers. I am biased, but I do fully believe that's the case. And I say that because we have consistently receive more applications for funding than we have funds available every single year. It's incredible. So in the last 5 years, so since 2017, I guess, we've awarded $23.7 million in funding across 124 projects, but had 55.6 million in requests. So that's a lot. So I'm also going to talk about the CDBG Tourism Development opportunity. That is a federal grant program, and it's a really unique opportunity that the state of Nebraska has an opportunity to offer. A lot of other states don't offer their community development block grant funds in this manner. It's a bit more of a creative approach, if you will, as creative as you can get with federal resources. So I'll walk through eligibility, grant amounts, timeline, resources, and contact information, but a lot of what I'm going to talk about, when you have a project that you think will fit, reach out. We're happy to have a conversation. It's usually like both programs, probably the state program more so, are very flexible and we can adapt. There are certain things that we cannot do, however, and I'll go a little bit over those, and it really is project specific, but we are happy to work with you and have conversations about the 2024 cycle. So next slide, please. So just kind of comparing them, in the 2020, and I'll go over this a little bit more, in 2024, which is the application cycle that we're currently within, CCCFF was offered for projects that were partnering with creative districts. So some of you in the room have already applied for the 2024 application cycle. We are excited to read your applications. I cannot tell you anything else about it. We did again receive more requests than we have aid available, but that's nothing new. We are going to award every single cent that we have available for aid, so no fear there. In 2025, moving forward, where I think that the creative districts can access CCCFF is through this public spaces element. So there are specific facilities that are eligible under CCCFF, and public spaces is where I see this fit, because you have to apply as a tribal government or a municipality. So it's not open to 501c3s or any other C3s or 501s. But you can partner with your municipality, which you're already starting that relationship. If not, you have been fortifying it for the past several years. So public spaces in particular, because it is a shared space ownership. It's either owned by the municipality, but shared by residents and commercial buildings. Things like I'm gonna put myself on the spot here. Haymarket, that's a public space. That's a destination. That's a district. But smaller pocket park type situations, and I cannot think of the Coneco name of that park in Lincoln, but that would be another example where you could potentially apply for CCCFF funding to support. So that's where I think you can apply. For CDBG Tourism Development, CDBG TD, it's tourist attraction facilities. We've funded museums who, and because it's a federal program, it requires that you need a national objective. It requires like a long laundry list of things that aren't insurmountable. They are doable. We can work through it. Communities have applied to have handicap accessibility and things of that nature. But both of these programs are construction projects, with the exception of CCCFF. There is a planning. But they still kind of center on that tourism development type thing. And I think that CCCFF and CDBG TD both sort of came of age when the Department of Economic Development still contained the Tourism Commission. So I think that's why. But also, of course, tourism development, economic development, these are not. So both of them annual applications. CCCFF, the application cycle, we're underway. We will do another application cycle January 15th, 2025. That's when our new our pre-applications for 2025 will come in. So you are right now at a good time to start figuring out if this program works for you. CDBG TD is an open cycle. So we will start accepting applications until we don't have any money. so both are great opportunities. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So like I mentioned, number of comparing the two, number of types of projects, types of facilities on the CCCFF side. So under the statute, it specifically defines public space, civic centers, recreation centers, and includes the conversion and rehabilitation of historic buildings. That's maybe another avenue that you all can take with your creative districts. Looking at some of the applications in the 2024 cycle, I see some application to that historic building. So what civic center, lots of different things. Those are just some examples. Other things can exist within there. So as you can see, etc. is a key point. If you can make a case for your project to fit into one of these categories, they're happy to listen to you make your case, and will probably accept that it makes sense. An arcade doesn't count probably, but maybe a walking arcade. It can be a multi-purpose facility as well. But again, for 2025, given the room, given the audience, public space, I think, is where you're going to be looking for your applications, as well as potentially the historic building. You'll see a similar set of eligible facilities on the tourism development side. That's not a mistake. That is intentional. And we see applications get both sets of funds, apply for both, and receive both. That's a possibility. You can use CCCFF to match your CDBG tourism development. You can probably use the rest of the programs that you've heard today as match under CCCFF. CDBG might be another story. Again, we are happy to have those conversations with you. It usually ends up being a better project, a better application. If you say, hey, I have an idea, reach out to get the conversation. Let's talk. Not during the application cycle, before it opens. Next slide. So, eligible applicants, I mentioned it, municipalities, tribal governments on the one side, incorporated municipalities and counties on the other side. Some exceptions. There is an exception for a co-ownership under the CCCFF where municipalities can apply with an eligible co-legal subdivision, but both programs, and I'm going to lose some of you in the room. Omaha, Lincoln, you cannot apply. Your CCCFF is specifically not eligible for you, or you're specifically not eligible for CCCFF under the Act because the way that the fund is funded. Omaha, Lincoln both receive state funding that is then the revenue for our fund of CCCFF. So it'd be double dipping. Right, we can get into the details of that. It's basically turn back taxes. Similarly, Ralston and Kearney cannot receive funding for two particular projects. If you want to talk to me about those, I can happily talk to you about those after class. CCCFF. So Omaha, Lincoln, Ralston, and Kearney for two particular projects. CDBG Tourism Development, Omaha, Lincoln, Bellevue, and Grand Island. That is because the four of you are entitlement communities, and the state cannot give you funding because the city gets your funding. You can go to the city and have conversations about how great of your project is, and maybe they can make space for you in their next action plan. Do that. Talk to people about your projects, figure out a resource that makes sense. Next slide, please. So this is a weird place to put the overview, right? Because I've already kind of talked about it. But it's really about figuring out a way to get people to come to where you are, right? And that can be a specific location within your community or just your community in general. High scoring applications tend to display creativity, innovation, progressive partnerships, progressive leaderships. They are really community driven projects. We are not it's super competitive, so it's really important for you to tell us how your project will impact the community, draw people in, keep people there. If it's tourism, if it's new residents, those are the things we want to hear about. There's also a little bit of like, you kind of can't sell your building for 5 years under CCPFF, which is not terrible given its state funding. But you also get priority if you haven't received a grant in the last 10 years. So that's great. Application cycle information there. We are anticipating making awards for 2024 at the end of March, so next month. Quick turnaround, and then you have a 2-year term to finish your project. Do we make exceptions? Yes, we do. We consistently offer and approve amendments to extend your contract because we understand that contractors are limited, things change. We try to be as flexible as we can with you. At the same time, we do need you to spend your funding. We do need you to spend your money to demonstrate the importance of the program. Next slide, please. So a couple of recent program updates. This is a popular program for people to inject their priorities onto, which is not a bad thing. I'm really excited about the opportunity to speak with you guys because it's because we have an opportunity to work with the creative districts, the Nebraska Arts Council. On the last couple of years, we've invited them to be participants into our scoring process. And it's been excellent. We really appreciate that. I think the more we talk to each other, the more likely we're to have better projects, better communities. So it's a great program. People see how great the outcomes are, and so it continues to improve. We are excited about our partnership with you all and look forward to a really cool project in 2024 and in 2025. I know you're all going to come back. We also continue to try to make improvements to our process. So there's a new SHPO form that we've started requiring in the last couple of years. Again, lots of information, not going to need to tell all of it. Next slide. Grant amounts. Like I mentioned, we have 2 different types of grants that you can apply for, planning grants and construction grants. The planning grant should be intentional around the construction grant that you apply for. It doesn't have to be. We have people realize that, as you know, if you go through the planning process, sometimes you figure out like that was a bad idea. That's part of the planning. That's okay. So, but you cannot receive 2 of each of the same in a 2-year period. So if you apply for planning in 2024, you can't apply for planning in 2025, but you can apply for construction. Similarly, you can't apply for construction in 2025 and apply for construction in 2024, or you know what I mean. It's just meant to, it's highly competitive. We're trying to be fair. There is a matching requirement, and you do need to provide half of your, whatever, CCCFF cannot account for more than half of your total project costs. You also need to match any CCCFF amount 1-to-1. That's all for those things. So we talk about Schedule A, Schedule B. The statute sets the schedule in statute, so I cannot change it. It's based on the amount of funding that we have in the fund, as well as the population. So if you have a bigger population in your municipality, you receive a bigger amount of dollars. But I'm sure that small communities would say that's not fair. But we are operating under Schedule B for 2024, and it looks like, depending on how the world turns, Schedule B will be where we are at for the foreseeable future. There are statutory thresholds. I did say there's a lot of flexibility. Some of it is not. This is what's not. Ownership, location, local match, If you have a building if a property that's 50 years or more, you need to go through the process of making sure that you're not doing something that will negatively impact the historic structure. Is that in here? And then also there's the 2-year rules. CCCFF review criteria is also set in statute. If you read it, retention impact, new resident impact, visitor impact, and then readiness and project planning, those 3 top ones, the 3 top criteria, pretty tourism related, right? Who's gonna get here? Who wants to come here? How are we gonna keep people here? And they're all weighted the same. So it's important to think about those things and figure out how your project meets those criteria and tell us that story. We do not know your story. I'm sure that your project is great, but we cannot know that. We have to start at 0. We cannot know it. Am I going over time? Next slide. There's some resources there, lots of things. We try to make it as easy for you as possible. We take any questions that we receive through the application process and try to incorporate the answers into the next year's application guidelines. So the less questions, the better for everyone. Susan Nickerson is actually the program manager or program coordinator. So she's your primary contact, and she will work with me if you have some specific issues. Next slide. So CDBG Tourism Development. I don't know a whole lot about it. I've basically, I am all the information I know I've already said. It's a very specialized program, but we do take every project that comes to us and have a conversation with you. It does have a local match requirement. This time it's 25%. This program does offer also general administration funds, which is nice because federal grants are complicated, to say the least. So we offer some funding there to help you with that. You do have to meet a national objective, as I mentioned. Most people end up meeting it through low and moderate income limited clientele, which tends to be any kind of disability. Your review criteria is there. It's kind of similar with the readiness and the in the community support, but project need, impact, really important for you to tell us your story. I like to say, and I'm sure there's probably a better way to say this, but if you can hand your application, I want to do this, someone who has no idea what you are talking about, and they can tell you, yeah, that sounds like cool, I want in, then that's good. But if they don't know what you're talking about, your scores aren't going to know either. So don't go into writing an application like we know what you're talking about, because even if we do, we don't really know what you're talking about unless you tell us. Contact information is on our next page. Program webpage there. Resource library. Lots of different requirements for federal grants. They are not insurmountable. We are there to help you. So if you have questions, or if you think it's federal, I don't want to mess with it, try anyway. Okay, we're there for you. There are people who administer these grants for other communities, like the development districts in particular do a lot of this. So if you're a member of a development district, that's a great opportunity. There are others that do it as well. It is learnable. It's not that bad. I make fun of it, but I do it. That's all I've got. I don't know if I went super fast or super slow.
All right, well, thank you so much to Jenny. That was really fascinating. When you hear CCCFF so much, it's good to hear some of the background too. So thank you. And now, last but not least, obviously, we have Katie Bradshaw, who is the Grants Management and Outreach Specialist for Humanities Nebraska.
All right, I am planning on keeping this brief. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate something a theme that I heard from some of the other presenters. Before I got this job working in grants for Humanities Nebraska, I used to write grants myself to Mid-America Arts Alliance, to Nebraska Arts Council, to Humanities Nebraska. And I have since learned, working now with Humanities Nebraska, that I'm not just saying this because my colleague Mary is in the room, but she is. Everybody on the staff is really great and super happy to help you out if you've got questions. So never hesitate to pick up the phone and call somebody. We would much rather talk with you and help answer your questions than to see an application come in and our hearts just kind of fall like, oh, that doesn't really fit. We could have helped. So talk to us. So Humanities Nebraska, we're a little bit maybe arts adjacent. So our mission is to explore what connects us and helps make us human. Next slide. So this is kind of like word cloud, word salad. What is humanities? It's so many different things, but it gets at this core of trying to figure out what makes us human. So there are a couple of pieces in here that specifically address arts. So there's, art theory, art history, art criticism. We're not able to help you create art. What we want to do is help other people think about, talk about art, talk about how to express the human condition through art. And actually, interestingly, a lot of the arts-based projects that we get touch on multiculturalism or history. So those are other subjects that often touch on art-related topics. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we throw this up here because we're kind of split between Humanities Nebraska and the Nebraska Arts Council. So we can't help you create art. Again, we can help you talk about it. So you have to have this significant educational component to help the audience understand and discuss things like values, history, and social context. You also have to have, and I would change this wording, I neglected to change the wording. It says humanities scholar, but really it's a humanities resource person. So the easy humanities resource person is a traditional scholar, somebody who works for a college or university, who teaches or does research in a humanities topic. But we also consider people who have lived cultural experience. And like self-taught experts, provided that their background demonstrates that they know what they're talking about. Artists and writers can also qualify as humanities, as humanities resource people. It just kind of depends on your project. And so that, again, an opportunity for you to get in touch with us, find out if it's a good fit. The list of eligible expenses up there, it's not an exhaustive list, but these would be the primary areas where you could request funding from us. So to help pay a stipend for those people, those humanities resource people, their travel, we definitely help to pay for publicity for an event. That's part of having a successful event, is getting people there. Resources to facilitate learning. So for example, we've helped to pay for some of the printing of an event program because it contained a lot of historic and cultural background about a play. And we can fund potentially a portion of the performance, but that there needs to be more of an argument for that. And so maybe that would be less something to rely upon. Okay, next slide. So our grants are a little bit more simple. We have sort of one flavor of grants. They're all project grants. So we can't help fund construction. We can't pay for general operating expenses. But if you've got an educational project, so your applicants can be your traditional nonprofits. It can be a government entity for any level, including tribal governments. We do require matching funds, so if you're coming to us requesting $2,000, your total project has to be at least $4,000. And So those other project expenses, it can be a cash match or in-kind match. So for our smaller grants, 100% of your matching funds could be in-kind expenses. So the value of volunteer time and donated items. So I know that's really helpful for a lot of smaller organizations. Okay, so types of grants. The mini grants, they're easier to get in part because they occur more often during the year. There are 6 grant rounds for mini grants, the first of the month on odd months. And so March coming up is an odd month, so March 1st is going to be our next mini grant round. You can ask for up to $2,000 for a mini grant. Major grants and media grants, those grant rounds occur just twice a year, so it can be a little bit more difficult, to get your timing down, to be able to have enough details planned out that you can give us that information in your application. So the major grants, March 1st, this is a kind of a double up, and then August 1st. Media grants are January 15th and June 15th. And before I say any more, our website, humanitiesnebraska.org, there is a drop down for grants. And this is going to have all of this information plus more detail plus all of our contact information. So if you write anything down, it would be humanitiesnebraska.org. Major and media grants, those are for grants more than $2,000. And people say, well, how much can I ask for? And I would say our average grant for a major grant is $5,000. And it's very rare for us to have given more than $10,000 for a major grant. Media grants, those are typically a little bit bigger projects. They tend to be for creating films, for an educational website, for a podcast series. Those have averaged recently about $9,000. And again, similarly, it's not very often that we're going to give a grant more than $10,000. In the course of a year, Humanities Nebraska gives out about 100 grants every year, and we probably get 2 to 3 times as much in requests as we have funding available. So the grants, as usual, are competitive. We would love to give money to everybody because it's just so much happier to say yes, but we have our limits. And we do, you do get a little bit of a bonus if your project is addressing an underserved audience. And so that can be due to socioeconomic status, it can be due to being in a rural area. So that's kind of a brief rundown of our grants program, 4 programs. And because humanities can be kind of tricky to kind of pin down, I just wanted to go through a couple of examples of recent grants that we've given. So next slide. And so some of you might be in the room, I'm not sure. I don't recognize everyone because I've talked to you on the phone. The Nebraska Poetry Society has gotten a couple of grants for having some virtual poetry readings with discussions. So they alternate the reading with the discussion, and they have a facilitator to make sure that the conversation and the questions keep going and touch on humanities topics. And then virtual poetry workshops where those topics are centered on the humanities. So helping people to write a poem to express how this particular aspect of being human feels, versus a technical sort of a workshop where it's like how to use similes in a poem. That's more the creating the art that gets a little bit off the humanities. So we're more into the things that address the human condition. Okay, next slide. Okay, and the Angels Theater Company, so they have a series of readings, and so because these are kind of, all of the plays are centered around a particular theme that touches on what it means to be human. So for example, the theme of what is home, what does it mean to leave home? And so that was a good example of how art can intersect with the humanities. Okay, next slide. El Museo Latino, it's an art museum, but they've been bringing scholars in to talk about some of the historical and cultural context of the art that they're displaying. Okay, next slide. And I know I missed Denise. I saw her walk out, but in Kearney, they've gotten a couple of grants. So they've been putting on some stage performances, and we've been able to give them grants because those stage performances, one of them addressed a literary aspect of the play, touching on Nebraska literature, and another play had addressed cultural topics. Okay, next slide. And Crane River Theater Company is another one that has gotten multiple grants. They have, and another aspect that would make a program more favorable is if it's traveling across the state, and that's what Crane River Theater Company has done, taking programming to some more rural communities. And then, we didn't necessarily help to fund a play, but it's that talk back session, that discussion with the audience that is fundable. Okay, last slide. And I just put my contact information up there, but we have 5 people in the Humanities Nebraska office that can help to answer questions. And I would reiterate, humanitiesnebraska.org. That is where you can find the answer to a lot of your questions, including how to contact us. So that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Katie. And Katie said something that I just want to reiterate again for everybody. Everybody that we heard from today was super friendly. So if you want to reach out to someone, feel free to do that. And you can also reach out to us because we also won't bite. So just want to get that as the last little piece of information, and also thank all of the presenters. Wow, that was a lot of information, but it was so helpful. And I mean, I will be spinning in some of that for a while. And I also just want to thank you for all of the resources that you provided for everybody and for the work that you're doing to support artists, organizations, and communities. So thank you.